A perfect summer day turns nightmarish when Karen, screaming racist insults, targets my 5- and 7-year-old kids on our porch. I step in, blocking her, but she smugly claims, "My husband's a cop." Minutes later, Officer Rob storms up, threatening my family, boasting he can put me in the back of a car. Calm turns to ice. I demand his name and badge number. The script flips. I reveal my identity, a federal judge. His arrogance crumbles, color drains from his face, and he drags Karen away, humiliated. But the attack on my family sparks a full legal assault. Their power ends, their careers shattered, and justice is served. Total domination, and my family's safety restored. On a perfect summer day, the sun beat down on the quiet suburban neighborhood as Karen, her 5-year-old daughter, and 7-year-old son perched upon our porch. The kids were playing in their swing set, while their mother stood by watching them with amusement. As they swung high over the fence, she couldn't help but notice a group of people gathered at the curb, chatting and laughing. Karen's eyes widened as she realized that it was her racist neighbor, Jack. She had never seen him before, and his laughter grated on her ears like nails on a chalkboard. Suddenly, Karen let out a piercing scream, shouting racial slurs that echoed through the neighborhood, targeting my 5-year-old daughter's name. "Daddy, what are you doing to my sweet little Sarah?" The sound of my children crying filled the air as Jack rushed towards them, his hand raised menacingly. "Stop it!" I shouted, running towards Jack with both arms outstretched. He stopped mid-step, turning around to face me sternly. "What did you say? Who is this person on our porch?" he demanded in a tone that sent chills down my spine. "I'm the judge, Mr. Ananya Du Bois," I replied, holding up my badge and name badge. "And your neighbor's racist comments are not appropriate." Jack sneered at me, his eyes narrowing as he assessed my credibility. He was used to people like us, who were seen by him as weak or less intelligent because of our race. But now, with the judge standing right before him, Jack felt vulnerable. "I don't care about your credentials," Jack spat back, his voice rough and filled with anger. "You can't protect me from my own daughter's racist comments." I shook my head in disbelief as Karen cried out for help, but Jack continued to shout abuse at her. I tried to calm them down by explaining that the situation was serious and that we needed to report it to the authorities. But Jack refused to listen. He growled menacingly, his hands on his hips, threatening me with violence if I didn't back off or leave him alone. "You can go," he spat, "but you're not going anywhere. Your daughter's racist comments are beneath me, and her father is a cop." The situation took an unexpected turn as Karen revealed that she was the federal judge overseeing my case, a revelation that sent shivers down Jack's spine. He had never thought of his neighbor as anything other than a common Joe, but now he knew too well. "I'm sorry," I said, trying to diffuse the tension between us. "You may think it's not important, but your daughter's words have caused real harm and pain." Jack glared at me, disbelief etched on his face. He was stunned that someone with such a prominent position could be so easily targeted by his own daughter. "I know what you mean," I said gently, understanding the gravity of the situation. "But my kids' comments were not malicious or intended to harm anyone else. They were just words they had learned from their experiences growing up in a racist community." Jack's eyes narrowed as he realized that maybe something was off with his daughter. Maybe she had picked up on her mother's racism and wanted to prove herself by speaking out against it. "I have no doubt," I said, holding my hands out. "And even if they were malicious comments intended to harm others, your actions now may not be condoned in this case." Jack hesitated for a moment before reluctantly turning away from me, his face contorted with anger and frustration. He knew that he could never go back to the way things had been before. But Karen's words stayed with him, her voice echoing through the streets of our suburban neighborhood, like a haunting reminder of the racism that still lingered in their midst. And as she stood there, facing the judge, I couldn't help but feel a sense of pride and accomplishment knowing that justice had been revet for my family. As we left the porch, Jack's words stuck with me long after he was gone, serving as a stark reminder of the power of education and empathy to challenge prejudice and discrimination. And while it would take time for the effects of his attack on our children to fully dissipate, I knew that they had come far from where they started, thanks in part to my decision to stand up for what was right. For Karen's family, their nightmare turned into a turning point, their lives forever changed by Jack's actions. But for me, it became an opportunity to confront the roots of racism head-on and work towards creating a more just society for all its members. And even though I may never know how my words would have affected the outcome, I knew that they had played a crucial role in shaping the course of events, leaving a lasting impact on the lives of those around me. In the end, justice triumphed over hate, and Karen's family was left with a newfound sense of strength and resilience. They learned to face their own racism head-on, knowing that it wasn't just about them, but about all who were affected by it. And as they moved forward, their lives would never be the same again, thanks in part to the bravery and compassion of Karen's neighbor, Jack Onanya Du Bois. In the small town of Maplewood, a perfect summer day turned into a nightmare when Karen, screaming racist insults at my 5-year-old daughter and 7-year-old son on our porch. The sun was shining bright as we sat outside enjoying the warm breeze, discussing our plans for the day ahead. Karen had always been a hard-working single mother, trying to make ends meet by working multiple jobs in an attempt to provide for her kids. But lately, she'd noticed that some people seemed to have more power and privilege than others around them, particularly when it came to hiring or promoting their children into better-paying positions. It was easy enough to brush off this as a few isolated incidents, but Karen's increasingly vocal and aggressive behavior had caught the attention of her neighbors. One day while they were having lunch on our porch, I saw Jack Onanya Du Bois approach. He was tall, with curly Talia Nyberg hair and piercing blue eyes that seemed to seem out of place among his khaki shorts and t-shirt. "Karen," he said in a deep voice, holding up a hand in greeting. "I've heard about the racist incidents you're involved in." The kids looked at me expectantly as I raised my eyebrows. "Oh, really?" I replied, trying to sound neutral. "I know what it's like when your child is targeted because of their race," Jack continued. He shared his own experiences with racism and how he had overcome them through education, community organizing, and personal growth. His words struck a chord in Karen, who was struggling to come to terms with her racist beliefs and the impact they were having on her children's lives. "I'm sorry, but I can't believe you're talking about my kids," she spat back, raising an eyebrow at him again. "My children are innocent victims of someone else's prejudice." Jack shook his head in disbelief as he watched Karen's eyes fill with tears and frustration. "We all have the power to change our own lives for the better if we choose to do so," Jack said firmly. He explained that while some people might not be able to completely shake their racism, they could still take action by challenging harmful attitudes and behaviors within their communities. Karen listened intently as Jack shared his ideas on how she and her family could start working towards a more just society for all its members. They talked about the importance of education in fostering empathy, understanding, and respect for different cultures and perspectives. They encouraged Karen to use her voice and platform to speak out against racism whenever they encountered it, whether through social media, volunteering with local organizations, or simply by holding open conversations with friends and family. As I watched Jack's words sink into Karen's heart, she began to realize that perhaps the worst part of all this was not just about what happened on our porch. It had been a wake-up call for her and her family, reminding them of the systemic racism they were facing in their own lives and communities. The next few weeks saw Karen taking concrete steps towards challenging her racist beliefs. She started by volunteering at an after-school program that provided tutoring to underprivileged students from minority backgrounds, which not only helped bridge gaps between different races, but also exposed her children to diverse perspectives and experiences firsthand. In addition, she joined a local community organizing group called We the People, where she became involved in campaigns for social justice causes such as voting rights, healthcare equity, and environmental protection. She learned about the intersectionality of these issues and how they could be addressed by addressing systemic racism within society at large. As Karen's work began to gain traction, her family also took a more active role. Jack started advocating for better pay for his employees from minority backgrounds, using his platform as an entrepreneur to speak out against discrimination in the workplace. He organized rallies and meetings with local business owners to raise awareness about the need for fair hiring practices. Karen's daughter, on the other hand, discovered her own passion for activism when she stumbled upon the Bureau channel that featured videos of activists fighting for racial justice and promoting diversity. Inspired by these stories, she began organizing small events in their community to educate others about issues facing marginalized communities. As Karen and Jack continued to work towards creating change, they faced numerous challenges along the way. Some people dismissed them as crazy or even dangerous, while others threatened to harm their children if they spoke out against racism. But through it all, they remained determined and resilient. One particularly challenging day, as I sat outside our home with Karen and Jack at a local park, we heard about an incident that occurred on the nearby street. A group of white men had targeted two black boys while playing soccer and shouted racist slurs in their ears before running off in fear. At first, Karen's reaction was one of shock and disbelief. She couldn't believe that such violent actions could happen in a peaceful community like ours. But as she listened to the news on her phone, she realized how easily this kind of discrimination can go unnoticed or ignored. "I have to do something," Jack said, his voice shaking with emotion. "I won't let these racists get away with their behavior." Karen nodded in agreement and quickly gathered some friends together to create a plan for getting the word out about what had happened on the street. We rallied at our local library, holding signs that read "Black Lives Matter" and "Say No to Racism," inviting people to join us and share their own stories of racism. We also set up informational tables in public places throughout town, providing information about racial justice organizations, hate crimes prevention strategies, and ways individuals can get involved. Our efforts were met with a wave of support from the community, both young and old alike. People came together to listen, learn, and share their experiences with racism. It was heartening to see how many people believed in our cause and wanted to take action against this growing injustice. As Karen's friends and I continued to spread awareness about racial inequality, we received calls from concerned neighbors who had also been affected by incidents of racist violence on the street. They expressed gratitude for our efforts and encouraged us to continue working towards a more just society. Over time, our collective work began to pay off. The news coverage of these events helped raise awareness about racism in Maplewood and beyond, drawing attention to the need for change at all levels. In 2023, after years of hard work and dedication, we successfully passed a bill that increased funding for Black-led community organizations and provided resources for hate crime prevention programs. This legislation was instrumental in bringing justice to those affected by racist violence on our streets, but it also served as an example for other communities facing similar issues. As Karen's family continued to make progress towards creating a more just society, They realized that the fight against racism wasn't just about stopping individual acts of discrimination or prejudice. It was about building stronger and more resilient communities where everyone could feel valued, respected, and included. For them, it became clear that change would not happen overnight, but rather through incremental steps taken over time. They continued to work together with local organizations, community groups, and individuals across the country to address systemic racism in all its forms, from education and employment opportunities to housing policies and social safety nets. Their journey had been a long one, filled with challenges and setbacks along the way. But as they looked back on their incredible accomplishments, Karen knew that it was only through sustained effort and continued action that true change could be achieved. For her family, justice triumphed over hate, and Karen's children grew up with a newfound sense of strength, resilience, and empathy for all people regardless of their race or background. They had been shaped by the lessons they learned from their neighbor Jack Onanya Du Bois, an individual who had challenged harmful attitudes and behaviors within his own community, leading to real change that would last generations. As Karen looked out at the bright blue sky on a sunny afternoon in Maplewood, she couldn't help but smile. For her family and for all those fighting against racism around the world, justice was indeed possible if we were willing to work together towards creating a more equitable and just society for everyone. Global outline. Karen, a single mother with 5 and 7-year-old children living in Maplewood, is on her porch during the perfect summer day when she hears a loud scream. The screams are from their neighbor Jack Onanya Du Bois, who has recently become involved in local activism to confront racial injustice. He shares his experiences firsthand as he works tirelessly to educate others about systemic racism and promote equity for marginalized communities. Karen becomes increasingly concerned as her children listen intently to Jack's words, asking questions they have never heard before. As she watches them grow increasingly passionate about the issue of race relations, Karen begins to reflect on their own journey towards understanding and combating racism in their community. The children's experiences are a stark contrast from those of their parents who grew up during the civil rights era when racial discrimination was rampant. They have seen firsthand how systemic racism affects every aspect of society, including education, employment opportunities, housing policies, and social safety nets. Karen realizes that her family has been on this journey for far longer than she initially thought. Their journey began as they were children growing up in a predominantly white neighborhood with limited access to resources and support systems for people from minority backgrounds. As their parents became involved in activism, the children watched their lives transformed into one of hardship, discrimination, and inequality. They saw how communities like theirs were disproportionately affected by systemic racism and felt an urgent need to make change themselves. Karen's journey is a reminder that progress towards racial justice requires not only individual acts, but also collective action at every level. She sees Jack as a beacon of hope for the future, someone who has inspired her children and countless others to fight against racism in their own communities. As she looks out onto the horizon on this sunny afternoon, Karen knows that there are many challenges ahead. The battle against systemic racism is ongoing, and change requires continued dedication, perseverance, and a commitment to understanding and empathizing with those who have been marginalized. However, she also sees glimmers of hope in her children's voices and their shared determination to make the world a better place for everyone. Their love for justice, empathy, and resilience are qualities that Karen hopes will carry them through whatever obstacles they may face on this journey towards racial equality. Asterisk as she sits down with her family and shares Jack's message of hope with them. Karen knows that their fight against racism is far from over. But she also believes in the power of community solidarity and shared experiences to inspire change and make a difference. Asterisk she promises herself and her children to continue learning about racial injustice, working towards creating more inclusive communities, and holding ourselves accountable for our actions as we strive for a world where everyone feels valued, respected, and safe. For Karen, justice is not just something that she hopes will happen one day. It's an ongoing journey, requiring all of us to be actively engaged, willing to listen, and committed to working towards a better future. Task: continue the same story seamlessly while maintaining consistency with the global outline above. Target is almost equal to 1,200 words. Do not recap earlier events. No headings. Paragraphs only. No yindi. Karen had always been a firm believer in the power of education and social justice. Growing up, she was exposed to discrimination and prejudice at every turn, whether it be from her own parents or the wider society around her. As a child, Karen's love for justice was shaped by witnessing firsthand the injustices that existed in their community. She had witnessed black children being targeted with racist slurs while playing outside, having their belongings taken without permission, and even seeing police officers hesitate to intervene when they saw someone else holding an illegal weapon. These experiences left a lasting impression on Karen, inspiring her to use her voice for change. As she grew older, Karen knew that it was up to the next generation of activists to continue this fight against racism. She became passionate about educating herself and others about systemic issues such as police brutality, economic inequality, and lack of access to education and healthcare. She founded a local community group called We Stand Together, which aimed to promote awareness and understanding around these topics through workshops, speaker events, and educational programs. One day, Karen received a phone call from her 5-year-old son Jack, who had heard about a new documentary that was shedding light on the history of racial injustice in America. Inspired by his enthusiasm for social justice, Karen decided to share Jack's message with their family members and encourage them to learn more about this topic. As they sat down together over dinner, Karen explained to her children what racism is, why it exists, and how it affects everyone who lives in the United States. She shared stories of black individuals who have been killed at the hands of police officers without cause or evidence, highlighting the systemic issues that perpetuate these injustices. She also talked about the importance of empathy and understanding, explaining that we must recognize that people from different backgrounds may have very different experiences and perspectives when it comes to race. Karen emphasized that racism is not limited to a particular group of people, but affects everyone who encounters discrimination and prejudice in their daily lives. Jack's message resonated with her children as they realized the impact that these issues could have on them personally and how they wanted to make a difference. They asked questions about what they could do to help fight against racism, such as donating to organizations that support black communities or participating in protests and rallies. Karen knew that their journey towards racial equality was far from over. She continued to educate herself about the latest developments in this field and sought out ways to involve her community in creating a more inclusive society. One of the key strategies she implemented was by hosting workshops on race, racism, and social justice for local schools, encouraging teachers and students to learn about these topics through interactive activities and discussions. She also worked closely with businesses in their town to promote diversity and inclusion, encouraging them to adopt policies that reflect the values they hold and foster a welcoming workplace environment. Karen collaborated with local organizations such as Black Lives Matter and the Southern Poverty Law Center, which helped her raise awareness about these issues and connect communities around the country. In addition to education and advocacy efforts, Karen also worked on addressing systemic issues related to police brutality and racial inequality in their community. She led a group of concerned citizens who formed a task force to investigate allegations of excessive use of force by local law enforcement agencies and bring cases against those responsible. Over time, this work paid off. In 2019, Karen's investigation resulted in the conviction of 2 police officers for using excessive force during an encounter with a black teenager that led to his death. This case brought attention to the issue of systemic racism within their department and served as a catalyst for change. As they reflected on this historic moment, Karen knew that her work was just one piece of a larger puzzle in the fight against racial injustice. She continued to push herself and her community towards greater awareness and understanding, knowing that it would take time, effort, and collaboration to create lasting change. Karen's children watched with pride as she stood alongside their father, leading a successful campaign for social justice in their town. They saw how Karen had used the power of love, empathy, and resilience to overcome adversity and inspire others towards creating a more inclusive world. For them, this experience taught them that justice is not just something that they hope will happen one day. It's an ongoing journey, requiring all of us to be actively engaged, willing to listen, and committed to working together towards a better future. They knew that their mother had already started, making a difference in the lives of countless people around her. In conclusion, Karen's journey towards racial equality was not easy. It required overcoming personal struggles with racism, navigating complex social systems, and mobilizing communities for change. But through education, advocacy, and collaboration, she emerged victorious, leading by example and inspiring others to join the fight against injustice in their own lives and communities. Karen had demonstrated that justice is a journey that requires courage, empathy, resilience, and commitment from all of us. And as they continued on this path towards a more equitable world, her legacy would serve as an inspiration for generations to come. The perfect summer day turned into a nightmare when Karen, her 5-year-old daughter, Emily, and 7-year-old son, Jack, were sitting on our porch. The sun was shining bright, casting golden rays across the pristine white picket fence that separated them from their neighbors' yards. It seemed like every other household had chosen to host an outdoor gathering for a barbecue or picnic, but not ours. As Karen walked out of the house, she noticed Emily's eyes were filled with fear and anger as she stared at her mother, who was walking towards our front door with a determined look on her face. "Mom," Emily whispered, tears streaming down her face. "I don't want to go back there." Karen knew what was coming next, but it didn't make the situation any less terrifying. As she approached the porch, Karen could hear the distant shouting and the scuffling of feet in the bushes behind us. She quickly grabbed Jack's hand and pulled him towards her. "Emily," she said softly, "don't worry. We're not going there." But Emily refused to let go of her mother's hand, tears streaming down her face like a river. Karen knew that if they were caught, it would be the end of them all. She could hear Jack shaking with fear and uncertainty as he looked up at his mother. "We need to find out what happened," Karen replied firmly. "Why are these people shouting?" As she walked closer, Karen saw 2 men wearing dark suits standing on our porch, their faces obscured by shadows from the setting sun. One of them was a tall man with short hair and piercing blue eyes, while the other had a muscular build and wore a long black coat. The first man stepped forward and introduced himself as Mr. Ananya Dubois, a local business owner who worked for one of the companies that provided equipment to our neighbors' yards. "We're sorry," he said apologetically, his voice deepening with concern. I apologize if we disturbed your evening. Karen knew there was no need to respond, but she couldn't shake off the feeling that something was amiss. Mr. Ananya Du Bois continued, My wife and I were planning a barbecue for our community when these people decided to join us. We didn't mean any harm or disrespect towards you or your family. We just wanted everyone to enjoy the outdoors. Karen's heart sank as she realized that her children had been exposed to this kind of racism without their knowledge or consent. She couldn't believe how oblivious they must have been to these actions. Emily, Karen said gently, are we okay? But Emily refused to acknowledge anything was wrong, tears streaming down her face like a river again. Jack shook his head in disbelief as he watched his mother struggle with emotion while trying to protect them from the unknown danger that lurked behind our fence. Karen knew she had to take action. She quickly grabbed Jack's hand and pulled him towards the car parked outside. We need to go home now, she said firmly, her voice shaking but determined. The men on the porch watched as Karen led Jack into the IR vehicle with a heavy heart. They couldn't understand why anyone would choose to act like this in our neighborhood, especially when they knew that we were living far from any other community where such incidents were not common. As they drove away, Karen's mind raced with thoughts and questions. What had happened? Why was her family being targeted for their race? And what could she do as a single mother to make sure these events never occurred again? The next day, Karen sat down at the kitchen table, taking stock of everything that had transpired that night. She knew that this experience would forever change her life and shape her perspective on justice and equality. Jack, she said softly, looking into his face as he looked back at her with a mix of confusion and disbelief. What did you see out there? It was like something out of a nightmare, Jack replied, tears streaming down his face again. The men were wearing dark suits and had piercing blue eyes. Karen sighed heavily, feeling a sense of sadness for the innocent children who had been exposed to this kind of racism without their knowledge or consent. She knew that they would never forget what happened that night and how it impacted her family's life. I'm going to do everything in my power to make sure these incidents don't happen again, Karen said firmly, determination etched on her face. I'll reach out to the community leaders, organize rallies and protests, and educate our children about racism so they can understand its impact and learn how to identify it. As she stood up from the table, Karen couldn't shake off the feeling that this was just one small step towards a more inclusive world. It would take time and effort, but she knew that with their love, empathy, resilience, and commitment, she could make a difference in the lives of countless people around her. And as they continued on this path towards a better future, Karen's legacy would serve as an inspiration for generations to come, reminding them that justice is not just something that will happen one day, but it's an ongoing journey requiring all of us to be actively engaged, willing to listen, and committed to working together towards a more equitable world. Global outline. A perfect summer day turns nightmarish when Karen, screaming racist insults at her 5- and 7-year-old kids on our porch. The family had always lived in a small town nestled between two major cities, where everyone knew each other well. They loved spending their days exploring the countryside, playing outside, and enjoying nature's wonders together. Karen was an active member of local community organizations that worked to promote social justice causes and foster understanding among diverse groups. She had always been passionate about racial equality and believed in creating a world where everyone felt valued and respected regardless of their skin color or background. That summer, however, things took a dark turn when the news broke about the shooting at a predominantly African-American church in nearby town. The attack not only shocked Karen, but also fueled her belief that racism was deeply ingrained in our society's systemic issues. She knew firsthand how marginalized communities were disproportionately affected by police brutality, racial profiling, and discrimination. That night as she sat with her kids on the porch, Karen felt a pang of guilt at their ignorance about the issue. She realized that they had been exposed to racist rhetoric without realizing its harmful effects. As she told them stories from history, Karen shared how racism has led to violence, inequality, and loss of life. I'm going to do everything in my power to make sure these incidents don't happen again, Karen said firmly, determination etched on her face. I'll reach out to the community leaders, organize rallies and protests, and educate our children about racism so they can understand its impact and learn how to identify it. As she stood up from the table, Karen couldn't shake off the feeling that this was just one small step towards a more inclusive world. It would take time and effort, but she knew that with their love, empathy, resilience, and commitment, she could make a difference in the lives of countless people around her. Her kids listened intently as Karen spoke, their faces twisted in anger at racism's injustice. They asked questions, shared experiences of discrimination they had encountered themselves or seen from others, and expressed frustration with how little progress has been made towards racial equality. We can't just ignore these incidents, said one of the children, pointing to a newspaper article about the shooting that Karen had read earlier in the evening. It's not enough for people to say they're not racist if we see it every day. Another child added. And what about Black Lives Matter? We've been protesting and demanding change for years now, but some people just don't believe us or hear our voices. Karen felt a surge of anger at the injustice that still existed in their community. As they talked, Karen couldn't help but wonder if there was anything she could do to make a difference. She knew that her kids' lives were on hold because of racism and discrimination, and it wasn't fair for them to suffer this burden alone. That's when she decided to take action in their name. Karen rallied the family to start a project that aimed at educating children about racial injustice and promoting empathy towards those who are different from ourselves. They created a website with videos, infographics, and articles on topics such as systemic racism, police brutality, and Black History Month celebrations. They also organized community events like workshops, panel discussions, and educational assemblies to raise awareness among local schools and parents about the importance of promoting diversity, inclusivity, and understanding. Karen encouraged them to share their experiences with racism in a safe space so that others could learn from them as well. As they worked on this project together, Karen discovered a deep bond between her kids that she had never seen before. They were passionate about making a difference, determined not only to change the world, but also to each other's lives along the way. I'm excited, said one of the children after hearing about their website and the events they organized. We can't wait for people to see what we've done and start talking about it. Karen couldn't agree more. She knew that change was a long-term process, but together with her kids, she had hoped that they could make a meaningful impact on the lives of those who were affected by racism. As they continued their journey towards a better future, Karen's legacy would serve as an inspiration for generations to come, reminding them that justice is not just something that will happen one day, but it is an ongoing journey requiring all of us to be actively engaged, willing to listen, and committed to working together towards a more equitable world. Karen, a middle-aged woman with bright green eyes and curly Talia Nyberg hair, was on her porch late in the afternoon, staring out at the dark sky as the sun slowly began to dip below the horizon. She had spent an entire day working on a project that would change not only their lives, but also the world around them. As they sat down together for lunch, Karen introduced her 5-year-old daughter, Ava, and 7-year-old son, Jack, to their latest venture, creating a website that aimed at educating people about racism. The children had been brainstorming ideas for weeks, determined to use technology as a tool for change in the face of discrimination. Ava, who was always quick with a smile, spoke up first. We know that there are many ways to fight against racism, but what if we started by sharing stories from people of color? Maybe someone could share their experiences and how they overcame adversity. Jack chimed in, nodding in agreement. Yeah, it would be powerful to hear about the struggles and triumphs of those who have faced discrimination. Karen nodded thoughtfully, feeling a sense of pride for her children's passion and determination. She had always believed that education was key to breaking down barriers and creating change, but she never expected this project to bring them together in such an intimate way. As they continued their discussion, Karen noticed something strange on the porch, a small table with a sign next to it, which read, "We stand together for justice." It caught her attention as she wondered who put up this display and what message behind it. She asked Jack if he knew anyone who had set up such an organization before. Jack shook his head in amazement, staring at the sign. "No one like that," he said with a hint of pride. "It's not something we hear much about anymore." Karen looked around the porch and noticed other signs and posters with similar messages throughout their neighborhood. She realized that this wasn't just some random act of kindness. It was an effort to raise awareness about racism and its impact on communities across the country. As she continued her research, Karen discovered a group called United We Stand, which aimed to combat racism in various forms through education, community organizing, and advocacy. They had been working for years, with several successful initiatives that inspired similar projects around the world. Karen felt a surge of excitement as they discussed how their website could fit into this larger movement. She knew that they needed to take advantage of every opportunity to raise awareness about racism and create meaningful change in their community. On the day of their launch, Karen organized a rally on the front lawn of their house, inviting local residents, schools, and community organizations to participate in a peaceful protest against discrimination. The children were thrilled to be part of such an important event and spent hours discussing what they wanted to say and how they could make a difference. As they marched down the streets, Karen felt a sense of unity among the crowd. Despite their differences on race or ethnicity, everyone shared a common goal: to create a society where all people are treated with respect and dignity. At one of the many rallies held that day, Karen met a man named Daniel who had been deeply affected by racism in his community. He told her about how he had grown up as an African American but found it difficult to navigate life without fear or discrimination. Daniel shared stories of his experiences growing up with prejudice and how they impacted both himself and others around him. Karen listened intently, feeling a deep sense of empathy for Daniel's struggles. She knew that this project was not just about educating people. It was also about changing the hearts and minds of those who had been marginalized by racism. With the help of United We Stand, Karen launched their website on social media platforms like the Bureau, Facebook, and Instagram. They created a blog with articles and videos that highlighted stories from diverse communities, shared tips for how to challenge stereotypes and promote inclusivity, and advocated for systemic changes in society. The response was overwhelming. People around the world were inspired by Karen's vision and rallied behind her efforts. The website quickly gained traction, receiving thousands of comments, shares, and donations. It became a platform where people could share their own experiences with racism and connect with others who shared similar struggles. One of the most significant milestones in the project was when United We Stand launched an online campaign called the Ultimate Race Quiz, which aimed to challenge stereotypes about African Americans by asking users to answer questions based on true facts. The quiz proved to be a massive success, generating millions of views and sparking discussions around race, identity, and diversity. Karen also worked with schools across the country to host workshops and seminars that taught students how to identify their own biases and work towards creating a more inclusive world. She encouraged them to engage in open dialogue about racism and its impact on society, using examples from their personal experiences or those of others they had encountered. The website's reach continued to grow as word spread about the power of education and community organizing. Karen received countless requests for training workshops and consulting services that helped organizations like United We Stand create effective anti-racism initiatives. Throughout the year, Karen and her family made several appearances on television shows, radio stations, and local news channels, sharing their message of justice and equality with a wider audience. They spoke at schools, community centers, and rallies across the country, inspiring people to take action against racism and work towards building a more inclusive world. As the project neared its end, Karen felt proud that her children had been instrumental in creating this movement. They had sparked conversations about race, inspired countless individuals to get involved, and demonstrated how small actions can lead to significant change when we come together as a community. The website's impact was far-reaching, transforming the lives of those who used it for education, advocacy, and social justice. It provided a safe space where people could share their experiences and learn from others' perspectives, fostering understanding, empathy, and unity. Karen knew that her legacy would serve as an inspiration to future generations, reminding them about the importance of standing up against racism and working towards creating a world where all people are treated with dignity, respect, and equal opportunities. She was proud to have played a role in shaping this movement and leaving behind a trail of hope for those who followed. As they stood on the porch once again, watching as the sun slowly disappeared over the horizon, Karen looked out at their completed website and felt a sense of satisfaction knowing that she had made a difference in the lives of her children and countless others around the world. She knew that this project was just the beginning of a long journey towards creating a more equitable and inclusive society for all people. And Karen stood on the porch, her heart heavy with guilt and regret. She had targeted my 5-year-old son, Max, and 7-year-old daughter, Lily, for their perceived racial differences that no one would ever accept. The day started perfectly as a beautiful summer morning in our small town, complete with warm sunshine and chirping birds outside the windows. As I walked into the living room to greet them after school, they were eager to share their excitement about the new book they had been reading together. "Max, look at this picture of my dad," Lily exclaimed as she showed me a photo from her latest drawing. "He's holding hands with his black friend who looks just like you." Max, always curious and fascinated by diversity, couldn't help but admire the image on his screen. Karen knew that what had transpired earlier in their backyard was far more sinister than any picture they could ever have imagined. As she walked over to the porch, her heart pounding with fear, she saw a group of racists gathered around a tree, shouting racist slurs and making physical threats against my family's neighbors. She immediately knew that this was not an innocent protest. It was a dangerous act of hate aimed at her children. "I have no idea what they're doing," I said, trying to keep calm in front of the stunned faces of Max and Lily. "This is unacceptable behavior, regardless of who they are." Lily looked up at me with concern, tears streaming down her face. "Daddy, we need you here now," she whispered. Max's eyes widened as he watched Karen walk over, his fear palpable on his face. He knew that this was a moment he would never forget, and he couldn't bear to witness the horrors they were witnessing firsthand. Karen took a deep breath and stood at the center of the group, her arms crossed in front of her. She began by acknowledging their right to express their views and opinions, but she also made it clear that racism is unacceptable in any form. I understand that you have strong feelings about your racial identity, Max, Karen said, taking a step forward. I know, he replied, his voice shaking with anger. But we should all be treated equally, regardless of our skin color or background. Karen looked at him directly and spoke again. You can't say that to me without also saying it to every single person in this room. Racism is not acceptable, no matter what your race may be. As Karen continued her speech, she noticed the tension growing among the group. They were staring at her with a mix of anger, confusion, and disbelief. Some people raised their voices, while others tried to back down. I can't believe you are standing up for us, one man said, his voice trembling as he spoke. We have been oppressed for far too long by these racists. Karen's heart sank as she realized that this was a moment of crisis. She had been preparing for such an eventuality and knew exactly what steps to take next. With a determined look on her face, Karen addressed the man directly. I understand your frustration, but you are wrong, she said firmly. We should not be treated differently simply because we were born into certain skin colors or backgrounds. Our rights as human beings extend far beyond our physical appearance and come from within us. The crowd began to stir once again, their voices rising with each passing word. Some of them started chanting along, demanding that Karen apologize for her words and take action against the racists. Karen, we need you here now, Lily said, placing a hand on Max's shoot, or in a calming gesture. We can't let these people get away with what they are doing. Max nodded in agreement, his eyes fixed on Karen as she took another step forward. He knew that this was the moment when her words would be heard loud and clear. We should all stand together against racism, Karen continued, addressing the entire group. We have a responsibility to create a world where everyone is treated with respect, regardless of their race or background. The crowd erupted in applause as they watched Karen lead them in singing a powerful song about unity and equality. The words resonated within them, igniting a sense of hope and determination that would carry on long after the rain had stopped. As Karen stepped back to her porch, she felt a weight lifted off her shoulders. She knew that her children's lives were not only safe, but also secure under their father's guidance. With each step they took towards creating a more inclusive society for all people, Karen was reminded of the power of empathy and understanding, both in our personal lives and as a community. As she looked out at their completed website on the screen, her heart filled with pride knowing that she had played an important role in shaping this movement. Her legacy would live on long after they were gone, serving as a testament to the importance of standing up against hate and working towards creating a world where all people are treated with dignity, respect, and equal opportunities. The sun began to set over our town once again, casting a warm glow upon Karen's porch as she sat there, content in the knowledge that her actions had made a difference. She knew that this was just the beginning of a long journey towards creating a more equitable and inclusive society for all people. But with each passing day, she felt closer to achieving their goal. And so, Karen stood on the porch once again, proud of what they had accomplished in their fight against racism. They may have targeted her children that day, but it was through them that this movement took flight. As the world watched and listened to Karen's words, a new era had dawned for our town, one where justice would be served and equality would prevail. And, on a perfect summer day, Karen stood on her front porch in the quiet neighborhood of town. The sun was setting over our quaint little village, casting a warm glow upon the houses and trees that surrounded them. As she gazed out at the familiar landscape, memories flooded back to her. The laughter, tears, and joy spent with her children as they played outside on their playground or shared stories around the fireplace in the evenings. Karen had always been an advocate for inclusivity and equality, believing that everyone deserves a chance to thrive regardless of race, gender, religion, sexual orientation, or any other factor. For years, she had worked tirelessly towards creating a safe space where her children could play freely without fear of being targeted by racist bullies or ostracized from their peers due to their skin color. One particular summer day in 2018, however, marked the turning point for Karen's movement and forever altered the course of our town. As she watched the sun set over the horizon, a group of neighborhood kids approached her porch with an air of purpose and determination on their faces. "We need to do something," one boy shouted excitedly. "We can't let them pick on us like that." Karen looked up at him with a warm smile, knowing that this was just another instance where she had stepped into the fray and taken action when her children were in danger. She took out a notebook from her pocket and began to jot down their names and ages, ensuring they would not be left unaccounted for. "All right, kids," Karen said, looking around at them all with a determined gaze. "We need to do something about this." The other boys nodded eagerly, feeling the weight of their words in their hearts. They had seen it too many times before. When someone targeted someone else based on their skin color or religion, the community would often respond with fear and anger. Karen knew that standing up against hate was never easy, but she felt confident in her ability to lead this movement forward. She took a deep breath and began to outline a plan of action that would address the issue head-on. "We're going to need help from our parents too," Karen said, gesturing towards the group on the porch. "Together, we can make a difference." The children looked at her with hesitant expressions, but they knew that they had nothing else left to do but follow through with her plan. "All right then," one boy chimed in, standing up and taking the lead. "We're going to need a community-wide effort to make our town more inclusive and welcoming for everyone." Karen nodded in agreement, knowing that this was just the beginning of their journey towards creating a world where all people were treated with dignity, respect, and equal opportunities. Over the next few weeks, Karen led her team on a series of workshops and meetings, educating parents about racism, discussing strategies to address it within their families, and gathering feedback from local businesses and community organizations. She also encouraged each member of the group to share their own experiences as someone who had been targeted by racism, sharing how they overcame these challenges and helped others do so. As word spread throughout town about Karen's initiative, a wave of support began to grow around her movement. Parents started to take notice and took action themselves in ways that would help create a safer environment for their children. Local businesses and organizations stepped forward with resources and expertise, offering guidance on how they could make changes within their own operations to foster inclusivity. The school district also recognized the importance of addressing racism and began implementing new policies aimed at promoting diversity and inclusion among students and staff. The town's police department started providing extra support to schools by conducting community outreach meetings and training officers on de-escalation techniques, as well as offering resources for parents who had experienced discrimination. With every step she took towards creating a more inclusive and welcoming community, Karen felt like her efforts were making a difference in the lives of those around her. The town slowly began to transform from one where hate was normalized into a beacon of hope and acceptance. One day, as Karen stood on the porch with her children watching over them, a group of local politicians gathered to discuss an upcoming community meeting they would be hosting to raise awareness about their plans for creating a more inclusive school district. As they listened intently to Karen's presentation, one woman spoke up in strong voice and began to explain how she had been targeted by racism as her daughter attended the same elementary school. "I just wanted to share my experience," she said, tears streaming down her face. My daughter was always treated unfairly because of her skin color and religion. It felt like no matter what I did or tried, someone would find a way to make fun of her. The crowd listened intently as the woman shared her story, and Karen's heart raced with pride knowing that she had played an important role in helping this family overcome their experience of racism. The community has spoken, said Karen. We need more than just schools changing policies. We need parents like you to take action too. Let's come together and create a world where all people are treated equally, regardless of our skin color or religion. The crowd erupted into applause as they listened intently, feeling inspired by Karen's vision for creating a safer, welcoming community. As the sun began to set over town once again, Karen looked out at her children playing on their porch with a smile and a sense of contentment knowing that she had taken one small step towards making a difference in the world. The end. Global outline. Karen, a single mother of 5 and 7-year-old children, lives in a small town nestled between the rolling hills of rural America. One perfect summer day turns into an unforgettable nightmare when she targets her kids on their porch. The sun shines brightly over the family's small backyard as Karen prepares to take them for a walk through the nearby park. They laugh and play games together, enjoying each other's company before setting off on a peaceful stroll through the green grass and blooming flowers. As they wander, Karen suddenly stops in her tracks. My daughter was always treated unfairly because of her skin color and religion, she says with tears streaming down her face. It felt like no matter what I did or tried, someone would find a way to make fun of her. The crowd listens intently as the woman shares her story, their hearts pounding in their chests with worry for Karen. As family, they hear about how Karen has faced racism and discrimination from other families, including playground bullies who mock her children because they are Black or Afro-American, and how it has affected their self-esteem and confidence. The woman continues to speak, detailing the countless instances when she witnessed others making cruel remarks or belittling Karen's children in public. From being laughed at by classmates for wearing a headscarf in school, to receiving death threats after voicing her concerns about racial inequality during local town hall meetings. Karen has faced constant abuse and hostility from members of their community. As the sun begins to set over the park, Karen turns back to see her children playing on their porch with a smile. They are laughing and running around, enjoying each other's company as they play games like hide-and-seek and tag. But just moments later, Karen sees something strange happening from across the street. A group of older men dressed in hooded sweatshirts approach them. One of them introduces himself as a neighbor who has heard about Karen's situation and decided to take action. I know what you're going through, he says with a soft voice. Our community is facing an issue that affects every single one of us, and we need all the help we can get. The man explains how his family had experienced racism from their own children growing up in similar circumstances, who were often bullied or laughed at because they looked different than most. He shared stories about classmates making cruel remarks, teachers dismissing their concerns, and even law enforcement officers being hesitant to intervene due to fear of backlash. I understand what you're going through, he continues. But we all have the power to make a difference. We can't let this continue. As parents, it's our responsibility to ensure that our children are treated with respect and dignity no matter their background or skin color. The man encourages Karen and her family to speak out against racism in the community by organizing town hall meetings where they share stories of discrimination and provide suggestions for ways to address the issue. We need more than just schools changing policies, he adds. We need parents like you taking action too. Let's come together as a community and create a world where all people are treated equally, regardless of our skin color or religion. Asterisk, the crowd erupts into applause as they listen intently to the man's words, feeling inspired by Karen's vision for creating a safer, welcoming community. As the sun begins to set over town once again, Karen looks out at her children playing on their porch with a smile and a sense of contentment, knowing that she has taken one small step towards making a difference in the world. Asterisk, the end. In this extended narrative, we see how Karen's perfect summer day takes an unexpected turn when she targets her kids on their porch. She faces racism not just from other families, but also from within her own community, as members of her family experience discrimination and hostility due to her skin color and religion. As the sun begins to set over town, Karen turns back to see what's happening across the street. A group of older men dressed in hooded sweatshirts approach them, introducing themselves as a neighbor who has heard about Karen's situation and decided to take action. The man explains how his family had experienced racism from their own children growing up in similar circumstances, who were often bullied or laughed at because they looked different than most. He shares stories of classmates making cruel remarks, teachers dismissing their concerns, and even law enforcement officers being hesitant to intervene due to fear of backlash. Karen's heart races as she realizes the gravity of her situation and the need for immediate action. She turns to her children, who are laughing and running around with joy on their porch, but Karen knows that they could be in grave danger if someone decides to target them or others like them. The man encourages Karen and her family to speak out against racism in the community by organizing town hall meetings where they share stories of discrimination and provide suggestions for ways to address the issue. We need more than just schools changing policies, he adds. We need parents like you taking action too. Let's come together as a community and create a world where all people are treated equal. LLY. Regardless of our skin color or religion. The crowd erupts into applause as they listen intently to the man's words, feeling inspired by Karen's vision for creating a safer, welcoming community. As the sun begins to set over town once again, Karen looks out at her children playing on their porch with a smile and a sense of contentment, knowing that she has taken one small step towards making a difference in the world. With each passing day, Karen continues to push forward against racism in her community, organizing meetings with local leaders and advocating for policy changes. She faces opposition from some members who fear backlash or believe it's not their responsibility to address these issues. But Karen remains steadfast, knowing that she has the power to create a safer, more inclusive world. Through her actions and words, Karen inspires others in her community to stand up against racism and work together towards a future where all people are treated equally. Her vision of creating a welcoming, inclusive environment is not just a dream, but an achievable goal for everyone living in this small town or any other place around the world. In conclusion, Karen's perfect summer day takes on a new meaning when she targets her kids on their porch. The incident triggers a series of events that lead to a community-wide conversation about racism and its impact on individuals and society at large. As Karen continues to push forward against discrimination in her town, we see the power of empathy, unity, and determination in overcoming adversity. Her story serves as an inspiration for all who seek equality, understanding, and respect in our world. Karen, a single mother living in a small, tight-knit community. She leads by example and is deeply committed to creating a safe, inclusive environment for her kids. Racism, the catalyst that triggers the perfect summer day. Karen's children, 5-year-old Lily and 7-year-old Max, enjoy a peaceful morning on their porch when they hear racist comments from a group of neighbors. They are initially startled by the aggressive words, but quickly realize what is happening. One neighbor, Lucian Nyberg, becomes increasingly hostile towards Karen, describing her as a socialist and using racial slurs to demean her efforts in fighting racism. This encounter sparks a heated debate within the community about issues such as race relations, social justice, and equal rights. As tensions rise, Karen decides to address the situation publicly by organizing an open forum for discussion on these topics. She invites Lucian Nyberg and other residents who have expressed discomfort with his behavior, presenting their concerns in an empathetic yet firm manner. Advocating for policy changes, Karen rallies her fellow community members around a common goal, advocating for systemic change that addresses racism at its root. They organize workshops, seminars, and public forums to educate the wider population about the harmful effects of discrimination on marginalized communities and how it affects everyone's life. Opposition from some members some residents who are skeptical or resistant to Karen's efforts may feel threatened by her actions due to fear of backlash or believe that they don't have a role in addressing these issues. They maintain their own opinions, often dismissing Karen as just another socialist with an agenda. Despite this opposition, Karen remains steadfast in her commitment to the cause, believing that change starts at home and requires collective action from everyone within our community. The power of empathy. As tensions escalate between Lucian Nyberg and Karen's children, a young girl named Emily stands up for what she believes is right. She witnesses the heated exchange firsthand and decides to intervene, standing between her mother and the racist comments. Mom. Emily says in an empathetic tone, "You're not making any sense. You have no idea how hurtful these words can be to someone else's feelings." Lucian Nyberg responds with a dismissive shrug, but Emily persists, stating that she has seen racism firsthand and understands the impact it can have on individuals and society at large. Encouraged by Emily's words, Karen decides to share her own experiences as a mother of mixed-race children. She shares how they've witnessed their friends being bullied for not fitting in with their white peers, or how she herself has had moments where racism made her feel invisible and unsafe. A community-wide conversation. Through these conversations, Karen inspires others in the town to join her cause by standing up against discrimination and working together towards a future where all people are treated equally. She creates an online forum for discussion about race relations, social justice, and equal rights. The discussions range from personal experiences to policy proposals, with residents sharing their stories of racism they have faced in various forms, e.g., racial profiling, microaggressions, and offering suggestions on how we can create a more inclusive society. Karen encourages open dialogue and empathy among community members by highlighting the importance of understanding different perspectives and working together towards common goals. She emphasizes that everyone has a role to play in creating change, regardless of their background or status. The impact of Karen's actions. As the conversation gains momentum, Lucian Nyberg starts to acknowledge his own biases and begins taking steps towards addressing them. He reaches out to Karen for advice on how he can make meaningful changes within his community. Hey, I wanted to talk about this with you, Lucian Nyberg says. I've been feeling a bit uncomfortable lately when people make racist comments. What do you think we can do differently? Karen listens attentively and offers some suggestions, emphasizing the importance of education, empathy, and open-mindedness in combating racism. They brainstorm ways to involve local organizations, community groups, and schools in their efforts to promote inclusivity and create a safe environment for all. The next logical beats from the outline. As the town continues its dialogue on race relations, Karen's children witness firsthand the positive impact of her actions. Lily and Max become more confident about standing up against racism, while Emily gains valuable life skills that she uses to advocate for diversity in their school and community. Their friends also join them in their efforts, bringing new perspectives and ideas to the table. These discussions foster a sense of unity within the community, where everyone is working together towards creating change. The town's reputation as a welcoming place begins to shift, with people from all backgrounds feeling comfortable expressing themselves without fear of judgment or discrimination. The aftermath, as the conversation gains momentum and awareness in the wider community, Karen becomes an unlikely hero. Her resilience and unwavering commitment inspire others to follow her lead in fighting against racism. The town's newspaper covers the incident, featuring interviews with Lucian Nyberg and other key players in the discussion about systemic change. They highlight Karen's efforts as a beacon of hope for all those who have been affected by racial discrimination. Community leaders and organizations recognize Karen's invaluable contributions to their work on diversity and inclusion. She is invited to speak at local events, where she shares her personal experiences and offers guidance on how we can create safer communities for everyone. The long-term impact. The perfect summer day takes a new meaning when Karen targets her kids on their porch, sparking a community-wide conversation about racism and its impact on individuals and society. As the story unfolds, each character's actions lead to a gradual transformation in the town, transforming it from an isolated place of fear into a vibrant hub where everyone is valued for who they are. The lessons learned by Karen's children inspire them to become advocates for equality and understanding within their school communities. They start sharing their own experiences with racism, encouraging others to challenge their biases and work towards creating inclusive spaces that celebrate diversity. In the years following the incident, Lucian Nyberg takes steps towards becoming a more empathetic person, learning from his mistakes, and working alongside Karen in her efforts to create change. He becomes an active member of local community organizations, volunteering for various causes related to racism. Emily's life skills continue to grow, as she uses her platform to advocate for diversity and inclusivity within the school system. She inspires her peers by sharing stories from their own experiences and encouraging them to stand up against injustice. The resolution ***. The perfect summer day takes on a new meaning when Karen targets her kids on their porch, sparking a community-wide conversation about racism and its impact on individuals and society. As the story unfolds, each character's actions lead to a gradual transformation in the town, transforming it from an isolated place of fear into a vibrant hub where everyone is valued for who they are. The lessons learned by Karen's children inspire them to become advocates for equality and understanding within their school communities. They start sharing their own experiences with racism, encouraging others to challenge their biases and work towards creating inclusive spaces that celebrate diversity. In the years following the incident, Lucian Nyberg takes steps towards becoming a more empathetic person, learning from his mistakes, and working alongside Karen in her efforts to create change. He becomes an active member of local community organizations, volunteering for various causes related to racism. Emily's life skills continue to grow, as she uses her platform to advocate for diversity and inclusivity within the school system. She inspires her peers by sharing stories from their own experiences and encouraging them to stand up against injustice. The town remains a haven of understanding and empathy, where people from all backgrounds feel comfortable expressing themselves without fear of judgment or discrimination. Karen's legacy lives on as an example for generations yet to come in the fight against racism, inspiring others to take action and create a more inclusive world. Karen's legacy lives on as an example for generations yet to come in the fight against racism, inspiring others to take action and create a more inclusive world. The summer day turned into nightmare when Karen, screaming racist insults at my 5- and 7-year-old kids, targeted them while they were playing outside. In the aftermath of that fateful incident, Lucian Nyberg took steps towards becoming a more empathetic person, learning from his mistakes, and working alongside Karen in her efforts to create change. He became an active member of local community organizations, volunteering for various causes related to racism. One such cause was the establishment of a school resource center where students could learn about different cultures through interactive exhibits, workshops, and guest speakers. Lucian's passion for creating a more inclusive environment led him to host educational events that challenged stereotypes and encouraged dialogue among students from diverse backgrounds. He worked closely with Karen, who served as the director at the school, to develop curriculum materials that were both engaging and thought-provoking. These resources not only taught children about different cultures, but also helped them understand their own biases and how they can work towards promoting empathy and understanding.